This morning, you meant it. Today was going to be the day. You could see yourself doing the work, finishing it, and feeling that relief. The plan was real. The intention was real. Then you sat down and you checked your phone first. Just for a minute. The minute became an hour. Then it was almost lunch. And starting before lunch felt pointless, so you told yourself you'd begin right after. Then after felt too tired. Then tonight. Then tomorrow. And tomorrow you'll mean it again, just like you meant it today. And here's the part that actually hurts. You want to do this thing. Nobody is forcing you. It's your goal. So why does it feel like there's a locked door between you and your goal? When you absolutely know, the door isn't even locked. You've called yourself lazy for this. You've called yourself undisciplined. I want to show you what's actually happening, because it isn't laziness. And the research on this is surprising. Procrastination has almost nothing to do with time and almost everything to do with the feeling you're trying not to feel. Once you can see the machinery, you can finally do something about it. Actual mechanics, 3 tools, all backed by named research. Let's open the door. First, let's name this correctly, because the name you've been using is the reason why the fixes haven't worked. You've treated procrastination like a time management problem. Better calendars, better to-do lists, better planning apps, and none of it stuck. Because researchers who studied this, Tim Peichel at Carleton University and Fuchsia Sorois at Durham, found something different. Procrastination is an emotion regulation problem. In plain language, you're not avoiding the task. You're avoiding how the task makes you feel. Think about things you're putting off right now. Really picture it. Somewhere in your body, there's a small flinch. Maybe it's boredom. Maybe it's confusion about where to even start. Maybe it's the quiet fear that you'll do badly. The flinch is the whole game. The task is behind the door, but the flinch is standing in the doorway. And when you scroll instead, you're not managing your time badly. You're managing your mood successfully for about 90 seconds. Here's the loop, step by step. You approach the task. The flinch fires. You reach for the phone, and the flinch goes quiet. Relief. And that relief is a reward, which means your brain just learned something. Avoiding the task feels good. Every single time you circle the door instead of opening it, the lesson gets a little deeper. You aren't weak. You're trained. There's a difference, and that difference matters because training can be retrained. There's a second mechanism stacked on top, and it's a strange one. Psychologists call it temporal discounting. Your brain treats rewards now as vivid and real, and rewards later as faint and negotiable. But it goes further than that. Hal Hirschfield at UCLA put people in brain scanners and found that when you think about your future self, the person who has to deal with tonight's undone work tomorrow, your brain activity looks less like thinking about you and more like thinking about a stranger. Think about that. The person you're dumping the task on isn't really you, as far as your brain's concerned. It's some guy. And it's easy to hand a glowing door to some random guy. So this was never a character flaw. It's 2 ancient systems doing their jobs. 1, protecting you from an uncomfortable feeling, and 2, prioritizing the only person it considers real, the present you. The door isn't locked. It's guarded. Now, let's be honest about what this cost, because it's more than the deadline panic. Yes, there's the obvious bill. The work gets done at the last minute, worse than you could have done it, by a version of you running on adrenaline and self-loathing. You felt that. But Sorois's research points at a heavier cost. Chronic procrastination is linked to worse sleep, higher stress, and even worse health outcomes over time. And the engine behind that damage isn't the delay itself. It's the guilt. Because here's the trap. The guilt you feel at night doesn't motivate tomorrow. It does the opposite. Guilt is an uncomfortable thing, and what have we established your brain does with uncomfortable things? It avoids the thing that causes them. The task caused the guilt. So tomorrow, the task feels even worse to approach, so you avoid it harder, and the guilt grows. The door gets hotter every day you circle it. You don't just lose the hours. You lose the evenings you technically had free, but couldn't enjoy, because the door was glowing in the corner of every one of them. That's the real bill. Not lost time, lost peace. Here's what you're probably thinking. You're thinking all of this sounds like one big excuse. Other people just sit down and do the work, so something must be wrong with you. Look at what you actually procrastinate on. You don't put off everything. You put off the things that you care about the most. The application that could change your career, the project that's attached to your name, the message that matters. The flinch is strongest exactly where the stakes are highest, because the fear underneath it isn't laziness. It's the gap between how much you care and how afraid you are of doing it badly. People who don't care don't procrastinate. They just do things carelessly and move on. And for some of you, this pattern is older than the task. If you grew up somewhere where mistakes got harsh attention, where the red mark mattered more than the 9 right answers, the delaying became protection. Can't be judged on your work that you haven't handed in yet. That was a reasonable strategy for a kid. Now, it's just an expensive one for an adult. So no, you're not broken, and you're not lazy. You're someone who cares, running protective software you didn't choose. The goal isn't to care less. It's to make the door easier to open than to the circle. 3 tools, all researched, all small on purpose. Tool 1. Shrink the first step until it's almost embarrassing. Pikel's research found something that sounds too simple to work. The flinch is at its absolute peak right before you start, and it collapses shortly after you begin. The dread lives at the threshold, not inside the room, which means you don't need the motivation to do the task. You need the motivation to do 2 minutes of it, because 2 minutes is usually enough to get you through the doorway. And once you're through, staying is easy. So don't commit to writing the report. Commit to opening the document and writing 1 ugly sentence. Don't commit to the workout. Commit to putting your shoes on and stepping outside. Make the step so small that the flinch doesn't even fire. You're not lowering your standards, you're lowering the threshold. The standards can wait inside the room where you will actually meet them. Tool 2. Pay yourself to show up. Not after the task, but during it. Katie Milkman at Wharton calls this temptation bundling. You take something you genuinely crave and you chain it to the thing you avoid, so they only happen together. In her study, people who could only listen to addictive audiobooks at the gym showed up to the gym significantly more. Not because the gym got better, but because the bundle did. So pick your version. The playlist that you love only plays while you're doing the dreaded task. The fancy coffee only gets ordered when you're sitting down to the application. The show you've been binging only runs while you're folding the laundry you've been stepping on over a week. This works because it fights the loop on its own terms. Remember, your brain avoids the task because of how the task feels. Bundling changes how the task feels. You're not overriding the machinery with willpower. You're feeding it something that it likes. Tool 3. When you blow a day, forgive yourself. Michael Wohl at Carleton ran a study on students who procrastinated on studying for their first exam. The students who forgave themselves for it procrastinated less on the next exam. The students who beat themselves up about it procrastinated the same or worse. Self-forgiveness wasn't letting themselves off the hook. It was cutting the fuel line. Because you already know what guilt does now. Guilt makes the task feel worse, and your brain avoids what feels worse. Every round of 2 a.m. self-loathing is literally heating the door for tomorrow. Forgiveness cools it. That's not a greeting card sentiment. That's the mechanism. So the script after a wasted day is short. That happened. It makes sense given how this works. And the next small step is still small. Then you take it. Not tomorrow's whole mountain, just the cat flap. So tomorrow morning, when you feel it again, remember what's actually standing in the doorway. Not laziness, a feeling. A guard that thinks it's protecting you, and a brain that thinks tomorrow you is a stranger. You can't argue with the guard, but you can make the step too small to flinch at. You can bundle the room with something that's worth walking toward. And when you circle the door anyway, because some days you will, you can put the guilt down before it heats the handle. The door was never locked. It was never about the door at all. If your brain also keeps you up at night, replaying the day, that's the other half of this machinery. And there's a full breakdown on this channel about why your mind won't shut up at 2 a.m. Same brain, same fix. Understand the mechanism, then use it on purpose. That's what this channel is. If that's a project you're into, subscribe. The next door is already waiting, and you know how to open it.